whispering, but it's not coming from anyone you can see. It's coming from right behind your walls, like someone is trying to get out. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to look at a nosleep tale. I don't know how common this is, but this one reminded me of a dream I had once where I felt something was in my apartment, but I couldn't find anything. Anyway, let's read. Alright, here we go. My friend house sits for a living. He usually stays in homes while they're empty so he can keep an eye on things. One time he was house sitting at an older home and he had a run-in with the ghosts. Okay, that sounded weird. Let's start again. My friend house sits for a living. Usually he stays in the homes while they're empty so he can keep an eye on things. One time he was house sitting at an older home and he had a run-in with the ghost of a small child. The floorboards in the house would creak no matter how many times he walked on them, and the pipes would echo throughout the house when he ran water. He thought nothing of it. One night he was watching TV in the living room when he thought he heard some whispering behind the drywall. At first he thought it was just mice. He went into the kitchen and started cleaning up after himself, because sometimes when he is bored he orders takeout and then falls asleep watching TV. He didn't think anything of it until he heard what sounded like a young girl whispering, "Are you awake?" Startled, he turned around and looked around the room to make sure that he was alone. He was. He shrugged it off and continued watching his show. A little while later, the whispering started up again, only this time it sounded like the girl had moved into the next room. This time he could make out the words, "He's over there. Don't let him hurt us." He got up and slowly walked towards the bedroom. As he got closer, he could hear more of the conversation. Two girls were talking about a monster under the bed. Then one of the girls started humming a lullaby. The sound of the whispering drove him crazy. As soon as he tried to get closer to figure out where the noise was coming from, it would stop. If it wasn't for the fact that he was alone in the house, he would have called the police. Instead, he decided to press his ear against the wall next to the bed to try and pinpoint exactly where the noise was coming from. Just as he did, the whispering stopped and he could hear nothing but silence. Perhaps he had imagined the whole thing. He shrugged it off and went back to watching his show, telling himself that it was just some kids from the house next door. A few hours later, he was awoken in the middle of the night by what sounded like whimpers. He sat up in bed, listening intently to what sounded like dragging footsteps near the closet. Suddenly, the wall next to the bed started knocking. At first, it sounded like someone knocking on the wall to get someone's attention. Then it sounded like someone was banging on the wall in a panic. He was frozen in fear as the knocking continued for what seemed like hours. Finally, it came to a halt. He stayed in bed trying to convince himself that it was all in his head. Maybe it was the old pipes again. But then he heard dragging footsteps near his closet. Slowly, very slowly, he got out of bed and turned on the light. He walked over to the closet and opened the door. Nothing. He walked back to the bed and turned the light off, laying down, burying his face in his pillow. That was the scariest part. He was alone. He checked every room in the house, but there was no one there. Everything was locked from the inside. There were no windows open or unlocked. There was no way anyone could have gotten in or out without him knowing. As the days passed, the whispers grew louder and more frequent. Sometimes they were incoherent, other times they were clear. He would hear the dragging footsteps and the knocks on the walls almost every night. He became so exhausted that he began to question his own sanity. Was he going insane? He thought maybe he should go on vacation and clear his mind. He needed rest. When he returned 2 weeks later, the whispering had stopped. Of course, he was relieved, but now he was even more scared. Why did it stop? What was it waiting for? He tried to ignore it, but he began to hear things moving in the walls, like scratching. He would hear tapping in the walls like someone was trying to get his attention. He would hear doors opening and closing. Once he even thought he saw the shadow of a little girl in the corner of his eye. Each day it got a little worse. He started jumping at shadows and hearing noises when there was nothing there. His friends told him he needed to take a break and come visit them for a while. He agreed. As he was packing his things, he heard a loud crash from the room above. Heart pounding, he raced up the stairs and threw open the door. The room was empty except for a rocking chair in the corner. The chair was rocking. Not wanting to stick around, he quickly left the house. At this point, he had been gone for about a week and a half. He missed his friends and wanted to see them badly, but he kept hearing the scratching in his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he could hear the whispering. Every time he thought about the house, he could hear the tapping. After a week of battling with himself, he caved and called the home's owner. He told him he couldn't take it anymore and he needed to leave. The owner was furious and told him that no one had ever said anything about strange activity in the house before. The owner told him to suck it up and finish out the month. So he went back. The last few days were the worst. He was so exhausted mentally that he didn't care if he got fired. He needed to get away. On his last morning there, he got up early, made some breakfast, and watched the sunrise. As the sun peeked over the horizon, he heard the familiar scratching in the walls. For a moment, he wished whoever was in the walls would just stop, but then he realized that if they stopped, he might never hear them again. So he leaned his head against the wall and listened intently. "Let me out," whispered a little girl. "Please let me out." The whispers were coming from directly behind the wall he was leaning against. He could feel the vibrations of her voice through the wall. He wanted to tell her that she could come out, but no words came out of his mouth. He tried again. "Please let me out." The desperation in her voice tore at his heart. He stood up and walked over to the closet. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door. Nothing. He turned on the light and stared inside. It was empty, but as he turned to leave, he saw a floorboard that had been removed. From inside the closet, he pushed it back into place and went downstairs. It took a long time for him to get over the experience. Still wonders to this day if the little girl is still trapped in the house. Did he imagine it all? Or was the house haunted? That was our story for today. So kind of a creepy story. You know, a lot of people say things like, "Oh well, he's a liar." Maybe it's really gonna be like that. You know, there's a lot of places that are probably haunted and most of us stay there anyway. We're like, it's another Tuesday. I guess it's haunted. I'm gonna put on my headphones and watch my video. Unless it's like constant activity, like if you're getting stuff, you know, thrown at you, or you hear like voices or you see shadows. But I do like stories where it's just some whispers in the wall. It's like, okay, it's a little bit freaky, but I can handle that. What about you? Would you stay there? Also, if you want to hear more stories just like this one, check out the series on the screen. And if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a comment with a shiver. Tell us your whisper story. We love reading those, and as always, don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying tales. I've been your host. Until next time, don't listen to the whispers in the walls.